It was a Thursday evening in late November, and I was standing at the kitchen sink washing the last of my dinner dishes when my phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't pick it up right away. I've gotten into the habit of not rushing to my phone the way I used to. My wife, Lorraine, used to tease me about that. She'd say, "Colin, one day you're going to miss something important because you're too stubborn to look at a screen." She wasn't wrong, but she also wasn't around anymore to say it, and that made the quiet of my kitchen feel a little heavier than usual. I dried my hands, picked up the phone. It was a text from my daughter. Not a call, a text. "Hi, Dad. Just wanted to let you know we're doing Christmas at Brendan's parents' place this year. It's going to be pretty intimate, just immediate family. You understand, we'll get together in the new year for sure." I read it twice. Then I set the phone face down on the counter and went back to the sink. I didn't respond that night. You need to understand something. I wasn't shocked by the text itself, not exactly. What shocked me was the casualness of it, no question mark. No, is that okay? No phone call where she'd at least have to hear my voice while she said it. Just a text, same as if she was telling me she'd be 5 minutes late picking up the kids. Matter of fact. You understand, like it was settled and she just needed to let me know. My name is Colin. I'm 67 years old. I live alone in the same house in Oakville, Ontario, where my daughter grew up, where my son grew up, where Lorraine and I raised 2 children over 32 years. Lorraine passed 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. She was gone in 11 weeks from the day we found out, and I can tell you that there is no way to prepare for something like that, no matter how many times well-meaning people tell you to cherish every moment. After she died, I expected a period of adjustment. I expected the grief, the silence, the strange new rituals of living alone. What I didn't expect was the gradual shift in how my daughter treated me. It happened slowly enough that I kept second-guessing myself. Was I being oversensitive? Was I reading too much into things? Lorraine was always the one who kept the family connected. Phone calls, dinners, making sure holidays were planned months in advance. Without her, things just loosened. My son Todd lives out in Kelowna. He calls every week, sometimes twice. He's got 2 kids under 6 and a wife who works full-time, and he still finds the time. I never take that for granted. My daughter Amber lives 20 minutes from me. 20 minutes. In the past 4 years, she's come to the house, maybe a dozen times. Usually because she needed something, a favor with the grandchildren, help moving a piece of furniture, once because their basement flooded and they needed somewhere to stay for a week. I was glad to help. That's not something I resented. What I noticed was that the visits only flowed in one direction. The previous Christmas, she'd invited me to come on the 27th. Not Christmas Day. The 27th. "We're doing Christmas morning at home, just the 4 of us," she'd said. "And then we're going to Brendan's sister's, but the 27th is wide open and we'd love to have you. Leftovers and an open calendar slot." That's what I'd been reduced to. I went. I sat at her kitchen table while Brendan watched football in the other room, and the grandchildren played with their new things and barely looked up. Amber microwaved a plate for me, and we talked about the weather and whether I'd had my furnace serviced. I drove home at 8 o'clock and sat in my living room and thought about how Lorraine would have never let this happen. She wouldn't have raised her voice or made a scene. She simply wouldn't have allowed it. She had a way of making everyone feel like the family needed them there. I never had that skill. By the time November came around this year, and Amber sent that text, 3 years of slow erosion had already happened. I just hadn't decided what to do about it. I sat with the text for 3 days. On the 4th day, I replied, "No problem. Enjoy the holiday." That was it. She sent back a heart emoji. I put the phone in my jacket pocket, got in my car, and drove to the community center. I joined a woodworking group there about 8 months earlier. It was my doctor's idea, actually. He told me that men my age who live alone tend to let their social world contract faster than they realize, and that I should find something to do with my hands and other people present. I thought it sounded a bit clinical as advice goes, but I went. Now I go twice a week, and I genuinely look forward to it. That's where I met Judith. Judith is 63, recently retired from a career in public health. She moved to Oakville from Halifax 2 years ago to be closer to her grandchildren, which she said with the kind of wry smile that suggested the reality had been somewhat different from the expectation. She doesn't do woodworking. She runs a watercolor class in the room next door, and we'd started crossing paths at the coffee station in the hallway between sessions. We got coffee a few times, then lunch once, then dinner. I want to be careful about how I describe this because I think people rush to conclusions. I was not looking for anyone. I was not trying to fill a Lorraine-shaped hole in my life, and I don't think you can or should try to do that. What I found, gradually and without planning it, was someone who was good company. Someone who laughed at the same things I laughed at. Someone who understood what it was like to build an entire life alongside another person and then have to figure out who you are in the quiet aftermath of that. By December, Judith and I had been spending time together for about 3 months. I asked her, a week before Christmas, what she was doing for the holiday. Her daughter and son-in-law were taking the grandchildren to Whistler, a ski trip. She'd been invited, but the flights were expensive and the chalet was small, and she'd gracefully declined. She was planning to spend the day quietly at home. I said I was thinking of driving up to Prince Edward County on Christmas morning. There's an inn up there I've always meant to try. Good restaurant. Nice view of the lake, even in winter. Would you like to come? She looked at me for a moment. Yes, she said. I'd like that. So that was our plan. I didn't tell Amber, not to be secretive. It simply never occurred to me that I needed to announce my plans to my adult daughter, who had already told me I wasn't part of hers. We drove up on Christmas morning. The roads were clear, one of those cold, bright Ontario winter days where the sky is an impossible blue and the snow on the fields looks almost purple in the early light. The inn had a fireplace in the dining room. We had a proper Christmas meal, roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, the works, and we talked for 3 hours without looking at our phones, and it was the best Christmas I'd had in 4 years. Before dessert, Judith asked if she could take a photo, just of the table setting, the candle light, the window behind us with the frozen lake in the distance. She has a good eye for that kind of thing. She took a few and then said, "Let me get one of us," and held the phone out, and we leaned in, and she took it. It was a good photo. I was smiling in a way I don't think I'd smiled in a photograph in a long time. She sent it to me. I looked at it for a moment, then I posted it on Facebook. Just the photo and the caption, "Merry Christmas from Prince Edward County. Grateful for good company and good food." I put the phone back in my pocket. By the time we got back to the car after dinner, I had 14 notifications. I didn't look at them immediately. We drove back down the highway, Judith with her feet tucked up on the seat, the radio on low, and she fell asleep somewhere around Belleville, and I drove the rest of the way in a comfortable quiet. When I pulled up in front of her place, she woke up and said, "That was a really lovely day, Cullen," and I agreed that it was. I drove home, put the kettle on, and sat down to look at my phone. There were messages from neighbors, from a couple of old colleagues, from Todd, who had sent 3 laughing emojis and then called it. And then there were 7 missed calls from Amber. 7. And 4 text messages. The first, "Dad, who is that woman in your photo?" The second, 20 minutes later, "Can you call me, please?" The third, "Dad, I'm serious, please call." The fourth, which came at 10:15 at night, "Dad, I need to know you're okay. Call me." I was fine. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking tea. I had not been in any kind of distress at any point during the day, but I sat with those messages for a few minutes before I responded, because something had shifted and I wanted to make sure I understood what it was before I opened my mouth. I called her the next morning. She picked up on the first ring. "Dad, thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I told you in the caption I was in Prince Edward County. I was having dinner." "With who was that woman?" "A friend," I said. "Her name is Judith." Silence. "You didn't tell me you were seeing someone." I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, "Amber, you texted me 3 weeks ago to let me know I wasn't invited to Christmas. I didn't think I was required to run my plans by you." Dad, that's not what that was. We were going to Brendan's parents. It was a family thing." "I'm aware," I said. "You explained. So who is she? Where did you meet her? How long has this been going on?" I noticed she had moved from "Are you okay?" to interrogation in about 45 seconds. I noticed that, and I filed it away. "She's someone I met at the community center," I said. "We've been spending time together for a few months. It's nothing dramatic. We had a nice Christmas dinner." "A few months? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it didn't come up." Another silence. "Dad, I worry about you. I don't want you to get taken advantage of. You know, there are people who specifically target Amber. Widowers, Dad, it happens all the time. Amber." I said it more firmly this time. "Judith is a retired public health professional who moved here from Halifax to be closer to her grandchildren. She is not targeting me. I am not a mark. I am a 67-year-old man who had dinner with a friend on Christmas Day because my daughter had other plans." I heard her exhale. "I just wish you'd told me," she said, and her voice had gone smaller. "I understand that," I said, "and I want you to hear what I'm about to say, because I'm going to say it once and then we're going to move on. You told me this holiday was for immediate family. I respected that. I made other plans. Those plans were good ones, and I had a good day. What concerns me is that you called 7 times in the evening, not because you thought I was in danger, but because you saw a photograph and you were surprised. Those are 2 different things." She didn't answer. "I love you," I said. "You're my daughter, and nothing changes that. But I'm going to live my life, and Judith is part of my life right now. When you're ready to meet her, I'd be glad to introduce you. That's not a demand. It's an open door." I heard her crying softly. I waited. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said. "About Christmas, about all of it. I didn't think about how it felt. I should have." "No," I said, "you should have. But you're thinking about it now, and that's what matters." We talked for another half hour. About smaller things. About the grandchildren. About Todd. About what the inn had been like, and whether the drive through the county in winter was worth it. By the end, we sounded more like ourselves than we had in a long time. I don't know exactly what shifted in her. I don't want to speculate. What I know is that in the weeks after that conversation, she called more. She came by the house once with the grandchildren on a Saturday afternoon just to visit, not because she needed anything. She asked me, carefully, how things were going with Judith. I told her they were going well. She said I'd like to meet her sometime, if that's okay. I said it was more than okay. Here is the thing I keep coming back to. I didn't make a plan. I didn't sit down and think, I'm going to post a photo and force my daughter to reckon with the fact that I have a life. That wasn't in my head at any point. I was just living. I was having a good day with a good person, and I wanted to share a moment of it the way you do. But I think what happened is that Amber had, somewhere in the back of her mind, a version of me that was static, waiting. A father who existed in a kind of suspended state, available when needed, invisible when not quite real enough to have a Christmas worth photographing. The photo made me real again, and I think it scared her at first, and then, eventually, it reminded her of something important. I've spent a lot of years being easy to overlook, not because I'm a pushover, but because I'm quiet. I don't make demands. I don't call and guilt trip. I don't show up uninvited. I was raised to believe that a man handles his own and doesn't make himself a burden, and I've carried that belief my whole life, sometimes to my own detriment. Lorraine balanced that in me. She was the one who said we're going to your daughter's on Christmas and then made it happen. Without her, I defaulted back to my own instincts, which are to step aside and not cause trouble. What I'm learning at 67 is that stepping aside isn't always the humble thing to do. Sometimes it just teaches people that you don't take up space, and then they stop saving any for you. I had dinner with Judith again last week. We went to a Thai place in downtown Oakville that she'd been wanting to try. Afterward, we walked along the lake shore even though it was cold, because neither of us was ready to call it a night. She asked me how things were going with Amber. I told her about the Saturday visit, the grandchildren running through the kitchen, the way Amber had asked about her. Judith smiled. "She's coming around," she said. "She is," I agreed. "And if she hadn't—" I thought about it for a moment. The water was dark, and the lights from the houses across the bay made long reflections on the ice at the shore's edge. "Then I'd have kept living anyway," I said. "That's not a threat, it's just the truth." Judith nodded. She slipped her hand through my arm the way she does when it's cold, and we kept walking. I don't know what the next year looks like. I don't know how things will grow or settle between Judith and me, or what that will mean for my daughter's comfort level, or whether the Sunday dinners Amber has started suggesting will become a real habit or trail off the way things sometimes do. What I know is that on Christmas Day this year, I sat across from someone who was glad I was there. Someone who had chosen to spend the day with me, not out of obligation or logistics, or because the calendar had a gap, but because she wanted to. That feeling of being someone's actual choice. I'd forgotten what that was like. I'm not angry at Amber. I never really was. I understand how it happens, how the busyness of a young family can make a parent feel like furniture, always there, easy to ignore, noticed mostly when something needs fixing. I understand it. I don't excuse it, but I understand it, and I think she understands something now too. 67 isn't old. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. I've got years ahead of me, and I intend to use them. I'm going to keep going to the woodworking group. I'm going to keep having dinner with Judith. I'm going to keep being a father and a grandfather and a person who takes up space in his own life. And if I ever have another Christmas where I'm told I'm not on the guest list, I'll drive somewhere beautiful, eat something good, sit across from someone who sees me clearly, and take a photograph worth posting. I keep thinking about that drive back from Prince Edward County, the highway dark, Judith asleep in the passenger seat, the radio low and me just quiet. Not the sad kind of quiet I'd gotten used to, a different kind. The kind that comes when something inside you has finally settled after years of being slightly off balance. I didn't set out to teach anyone a lesson. That's the part I want to be clear about, because I think it matters. I wasn't strategic. I wasn't plotting. I was just a man who decided at 67 that he was going to stop making himself small to make other people comfortable. That's all it was. And somehow that one small decision, booking a table at an inn, saying yes to a good person's company, posting a photograph, changed the whole shape of things. There's something I've come to understand about how life actually works, and it has nothing to do with luck or timing or who deserves what. It has to do with what you're willing to accept, quietly, over a long stretch of time. For 3 years I accepted being an afterthought, not because I was weak, but because I told myself it was the right thing to do. Keep the peace. Don't make demands. Be easy. And every time I accepted it, I was teaching Amber something, that I didn't require consideration, that I'd be fine regardless, that she didn't need to make room for me because I'd shrink to fit whatever space was left. That's not her fault entirely. That's on me too. What changed wasn't her. What changed was my own sense of what I was owed, not as a father with authority over his adult children, but as a person with a life worth living out loud. The moment I stopped waiting to be included and started building something of my own, everything shifted. Not dramatically, not overnight, but it shifted. I think about the kind of person it takes to do that quietly, not to blow up, not to guilt trip, not to make it a confrontation, just to absorb what's happening, sit with it honestly, and then choose differently. That takes a certain steadiness of character that I didn't always have. Lorraine helped build it in me. The years after she died built more of it, whether I wanted them to or not. Grief has a way of doing that, stripping away the things you leaned on until you find out what's underneath. And underneath, I found that I still had judgment. I could read a situation clearly. Amber's panic when she saw that photo wasn't concern for my safety. It was the shock of realizing her father had a life she knew nothing about. I knew that in the first 30 seconds of reading her messages. Knowing it clearly, without bitterness, let me have the right conversation with her instead of the wrong one. And then there's the simple matter of showing up. Continuing. Not retreating back into the quiet house and the careful invisibility just because it would have been easier. Judith asked me once what I was most proud of in the past few years, and I said surviving without becoming bitter. She nodded, like she understood exactly what that cost. I'm not done figuring things out. I don't think 67 is a finishing line for anything, but I know that the life I'm living now, with real company, real dinners, real photographs worth posting, is closer to the life I actually want than anything I was living before I decided I was worth the effort. That's the only thing I'd want anyone to take from this. Not a dramatic conclusion, just that small, sturdy idea. You're worth the effort. Start from there and see where it takes you.